Welcome to Fireside Giants. My name is Alex with my co-host here, Anthony Rivardo. We got some good, we got some bad news today. And starting with Adoree Jackson. If you haven't heard already, Adoree Jackson first got poked in the eye, came back a couple plays later, and right immediately suffered an ankle injury. And ankle injuries are always a big question mark because you don't really know the severity of it until you get some testing done. They feel out the ligament damage, if there is any. Of course, you'd rather have a low ankle sprain than a high ankle sprain. I suffered multiple high ankle sprains, and both of them kept me out for at least a month. They're really hard to come back from, but low ankle sprain usually is a little bit easier to deal with. Luckily, it seems like Adoree Jackson kind of escaped any major serious injuries because Pat Leonard of the New York Daily News did report that they haven't even ruled him out for practice tomorrow. But I will say, kind of odd that they carted him off the field. Apparently, they had a huge ice wrap around his ankle, and there was significant swelling, according to Ian Rappaport. So, who really is right here? Hopefully, it's best case scenario, and it was very minor. He'll be ready for week 1 in a couple of weeks. But at this point, just don't even rush him back. Sit Adoree Jackson for a couple days. Let the swelling go down. You don't want to be putting any unnecessary pressure on Adoree Jackson, who has experience at the NFL level. He can come in week 1 after practicing for a couple days before the first game. So, Anthony, before we dive into the additional aspects of this injury, Kenny Golladay is the Kyle Rudolphs of this team, and what they're doing so far. How are you doing today, my friend?
I'm doing good. Of course, I'm feeling quite concerned with the Adoree Jackson situation. This is a guy that I think was supposed to have a major impact on this defense this year. He's been playing really well all summer. He's really stood out as one of the best players on the team in training camp, and I think it's really important that he gets healthy for the start of the regular season. So whatever they have to do, have him sit out of every single practice until the regular season begins, do it. We need him healthy for the regular season. This is super concerning because, again, this is a great player on this team, but also because of his injury history. Adoree Jackson is a player that the Giants really took a gamble on. This was a risky signing. They paid him a whole lot of money to be their secondary cornerback, but they also paid him a lot of money knowing that he's missed basically the last 2 years with injuries. Plus, he had injuries back in college. Plus, even when he was playing and was playing well, he was still dealing with some injuries. This is a guy who's just had injuries throughout his career. So, yes, this was a very risky, high-risk signing for the Giants. If you go onto the injury report websites, Adoree Jackson is listed as a high-risk player for injuries because he's just dealt with so many of them in the past. So, while I loved the signing and thought that it had great boom potential, we all knew that it had great bust potential. And I'm not saying that this is going to be a bust signing just because he has a low ankle sprain potentially after, practices. But what I'm saying is this is just really concerning, very alarming for a player who has such an injury history to once again, after a full summer of practices, gets injured again. I am concerned. I really hope that it's nothing major and he's able to play in week 1. But as Ian Rappaport said, there's a chance that he does miss the week 1 matchup.
Yeah, absolutely. And, a lot of people had different opinions on the Adoree Jackson signing, whether it be, the injury history was a big flag, a big red flag, and people were saying maybe we paid him too much, 3 years, $39 million. Personally, for a number 2 corner of his stature, if he is healthy, and, he should be healthy for week 1 based on the positive reports coming after the ankle injury. If he can remain healthy, this is one of the best secondaries in the NFL, and that's where the Giants were going with this. They wanted a lockdown number 1 and a lockdown number 2 who they can utilize in specific matchups, right? James Bradbury, really good against good route runners, really good against more physical receivers, and Adoree Jackson, good against speedsters like the Tyree Hicks, the Jalen Ragers of the world, the Curtis Samuels of the world. These guys who have good speed, good shiftiness, Adoree Jackson can match that speed, and he's proven he can even cover the likes of DeAndre Hopkins and other guys like Julio Jones. So I'm excited to see, what this secondary can do as long as they remain healthy. But that's what the Giants were envisioning. 2 guys who have differing skill sets, but also very good players who they can use to mix and match on specific corners, rather receivers. So hopefully this is a positive, result for his injury. We'll find out more, and we'll get you guys all the information you need, as always, my friends. But let's talk about one player who did make a return today off the PUP list, and that's tight end Kyle Rudolph, right? Kyle Rudolph, who just a week ago, general manager Dave Gettleman was saying, we have no idea if he's going to be, back. We don't know when. We don't know how. We don't know why. And, of course, that created a little bit of animosity, a little bit of negativity within the fan base saying, do you even know anything? Do you even know what this injury was like when you guys signed him? Was it premature? He did not give us any sense of optimism, any sense of confidence or reassurance that this was a good move, right? I feel like if the Giants knew he was going to be coming back shortly, they probably should have just been like, yeah, like he's making really great progress. We expect him to be back before the regular season. I don't really understand the concept or the reasoning as to why they would hide that reality, hide that instead of just pissing people off. Because now we're all like, wait a second, you signed a guy for a nice chunk of change, a nice contract, $6 million next season. You signed him, but you didn't know how long he'd be out. That's what we took away from Dave Gettleman's press conference and what he said. And as we know, if he was to end up on the PUP list to start the season, he would miss the first 6 games of the year, and that's a big problem. So luckily, off the PUP list, we can avoid any of that negativity, avoid any of that stuff that would have happened on the field, because he is such a big red zone threat, right? The guy has 48 career touchdowns. 40 of them came in the red zone. The Giants had one of the worst, if not the worst, red zone offense last year. They had one of the worst offenses in points per game at 17.5. They need more production in the red zone, and Kyle Rudolph, as a 6'7" tight end, offers just that. He's a huge body. He's a better blocker than most of the options we have at the position, and I'm really excited to see him get more action, really start to catch up here. He probably won't be 100% snaps come week 1, but if he hovers at 50%, usually tight ends don't really spend 100% of reps on the field anyway, so I think he'll play a normal amount for what the Giants need him for, and that's all that we're really expecting from Kyle Rudolph. Already has good hands. He's dropped 1 pass in like 3 years. Anthony, when you're looking at Kyle, how important is he to this team, and how excited are you that he's finally getting some practice in?
I'm super excited. You know that I've been a huge advocate of Kyle Rudolph. I've been saying that he was one of the more underrated signings in the entire free agency period for any team, because not only does he provide a lot in the red zone, right? The Giants had the 31st ranked red zone offense last season. They were terrible offense in general, but a lot of that problem stemmed offensively, not like outside of the red zone. A lot of it stemmed from the lack of a short passing game. Like underneath, they just couldn't get it going. Every now and then, they would be able to hit on some deep balls, which is what got them in the scoring position and then what got them in the end zone at times. But for the most part, they tried to play a very West Coast dink and dunk, short passing game offense with a lot of power gap running, and they really weren't able to find a ton of success last year. Again, 31st ranked offense, and a lot of that had to do with the fact that, yes, Daniel Jones' statistics throwing underneath were poor, but also his receivers' statistics throwing underneath were extremely poor. If you look at Evan Engram, all of the interceptions that were targeted to Evan Engram came within 0 to 10 yards of the line of scrimmage. So going vertical with Evan Engram, how he should be used as a vertical threat downfield, he was great. He was going downfield, he was making plays, he was making some one-handed catches at times, but then you put him in the 0 to 10 yard range, ball hits both of his hands, sometimes hits him in the chest, bounces right off of him, and ends up in the hands of a defender. That kept happening over and over with Evan Engram because that's just not his playing style. He's not meant to be an inline tight end every single down that run blocks and sits 5 yards from the line of scrimmage. That's just not how he plays. He ran a 4.4 40 for God's sake. Like, get the guy downfield, Let's have him run some vertical route concepts. But instead, the Giants just kept having him go underneath, and he's just not good at that. His contested catch rate for his career is somewhere around 32%. Compare that to Kyle Rudolph's 50-something%. So when you're talking about making those tough plays, those tough catches underneath, you're talking about Kyle Rudolph being one of the most reliable tight ends in football. 0 drops in the past 2 years, despite 90-plus targets. So those are all the stats you got to know. But then when you envision this offense in the 2021 season, and you're talking about having a healthy Kyle Rudolph in the lineup, you're talking about this guy being what Evan Engram tried to be last year, but ultimately failed to be. Being that reliable, sure-handed threat underneath, that security blanket for Daniel Jones. Pressure's there. He needs to dump it off to somebody reliable. Kyle Rudolph. That's what you get with Kyle Rudolph in this offense, and it also unlocks a whole nother aspect of Evan Engram's game where he doesn't have to worry about doing all that stuff underneath that he's not good at. He can just excel at what he is good at. Just go vertical, make some plays deep, be a big play threat, because that's what they got Evan Engram to be. They wanted him to split the cover 2 zone defenses, right? They want him to go right down the middle of the field, up the seam, and make some of those tough catches downfield because he is a vertical threat and he's faster than most linebackers in the NFL. That's what they wanted Evan Engram to be, but last year they forced him to be this underneath Kyle Rudolph playing style. So now Kyle Rudolph plays that role, Evan Engram goes downfield, and this really should unlock a whole nother level of Evan's game and really boost the offense's productivity by like tenfold.
Yeah, the connection you made with Evan Engram and Kyle Rudolph, that's where I see Kyle Rudolph making his biggest impact. Aside from the 12 personnel kind of running formations where they're pushing it to that side, I think that he actually masks Evan Ingram's biggest flaw, and that is catching footballs in the middle of the field, 0 to 10 yards. In that area, last year Evan Ingram not allowed, but he was correlated to 6 interceptions, okay? 6 interceptions on passes thrown to Evan Ingram 0 to 10 yards in the middle of the football field. That is where Kyle Rudolph thrives. So they're really masking. They went out, got Kyle, who literally solves that problem, allows Evan Ingram to work the seams, work those spray fades, work those drag routes, and do a lot more with his abilities and athleticism instead of just sitting in the middle of the field and acting as a hook option. We need him to be spread out. We need him to be in the slot. We need him to be doing different and unique things. And I think the Giants are starting to realize that Evan Ingram can't just be a traditional tight end. He has to be used kind of like a Darren Waller, pushing him downfield, getting vertical, and then having that check down underneath. I think, Anthony, we're going to see a lot of high-low reads with those tight ends this year, whether it be with Kyle Rudolph and Evan Ingram going over the top, and then, Daniel Jones has the ability to look down, throw a fastball to Kyle Rudolph, who hasn't dropped a pass in 3 years, or dropped one pass in 3 years. So you have a very reliable option that now, think about that. Six turnovers last year that were balls thrown to Evan Ingram. One of them being against, I guess it was just a drop, but 6 of those interceptions. Think about the scoring drives those could have turned into. Think about the points that went against us because of those drives. All of those things, you have to think about it. At the end of the day, Kyle Rudolph is definitely solving a big issue for us, and I think that his value is tremendous to this offense, especially in the red zone where we can trust him to go up and make big catches. When you have guys like Evan Ingram, when you have guys like Sterling Shepard, Kenny Golladay, Kadarius Toney, and Kyle Rudolph, you have so many options in the red zone. All of them are more than capable of being very productive in that area. You physically can't match up all your best players against them. You can't take away all those options unless you're literally disregarding the running back position. Then you have Saquon freaking Barkley. You know what I mean? Like, you have so much talent there in the red zone. It'd be a shame to see Jason Garrett not be able to scheme up some good red zone plays here. But Anthony, when you're looking at guys like Kenny Golladay, when you're looking at guys like Kadarius Toney, are you thinking they'll be available for week 1? I know Kadarius Toney is still dealing with COVID. He's still coming back from COVID, and Kenny Golladay working through a hamstring injury. He's been doing some stuff, running, jogging, but no live action just yet. I think Kenny will be available for week 1. Kadarius Toney still definitely a big question mark for me.
I think that Kadarius Toney is a ginormous question mark. I have no idea what to make of his situation. I understand he had COVID. He was working his way back. He had some personal matters. He worked his way back. But now what? He's got this mystery injury that the Giants still... It's been like 2 weeks. We have no update on what that injury might be. They're just saying he picked something up in practice, and he's dealing with it, and he's working through it. Okay, well, how severe is this mystery injury, and how long is it going to take him to recover? I would really appreciate if the Giants would communicate that with us. I understand maybe they don't want to communicate it to the media because they maybe don't want the Denver Broncos to know the answer, but I feel like we should know this answer, and if not, we're just going to continue to get more and more concerned with Kadarius Toney. The more time that he misses on the field, and please listen to me when I say this, I'm not concerned about him being some bust of a draft pick. That's not my problem. I don't think he's going to be a bust. I think he's a tremendously talented player, but oftentimes, tremendously talented players don't do as well to start their NFL career because they're not fully ready to play. This guy is not going to be fully ready to play in week 1. He is way far behind learning the scheme. He has not been able to practice with the starters. He's barely caught any passes from Daniel Jones. He hasn't participated in, I don't think, any 11-on-11 matchups. What has he done in practice that tells you he's ready to play in week 1? He has not put on full pads and been tackled since when? Last year? Like, not even in the 2021 calendar. So he's not going to be ready for week 1 to play at a sufficient level. He's going to be WR5 when we get to week 1 at this point, unless he starts practicing within the next week and sees some playing time in the preseason game on Sunday. But unfortunately, we have no idea whether or not he is going to be playing in that preseason game. We have zero updates on this. We have not seen him do anything of significance during practice. Yes, I'm getting concerned with Kadarius Toney. And no, it's not because I don't think he's going to be a good player. I think in the long run, yes, he will be. But I wanted to see him hopefully have an impact in year 1. And at this point, being this far behind, the Giants have even admitted that he is far behind. I just can't see him having a significant impact on the offense in his first season at this point. It's just, he seems too far behind at this point. But Kenny Golladay, I'll move on to him. Kenny Golladay is a player that I do think is going to be ready for week 1. I think that he's probably ready to return to practice, but they're just being extra cautious, and they have to be. Like Adoree Jackson, this was a high-risk signing. This is a guy that they took a gamble on. Very talented player with a very extensive injury history. Golladay missed the majority of last season. He missed the first 2 games of the year with a hamstring injury. Then he comes back and then he hurts his hip and misses the final 10 games of the year, which was also frustrating for Kenny Golladay. But still, he has a history of hamstring injuries. Even in his rookie season, he had a hamstring injury. So now he's dealing with another hamstring injury, similar to how Adoree Jackson is dealing with another ankle injury. So, yeah, I have a level of concern for all of those guys that we just, kind of discussed. But Kenny Golladay, ultimately, I do think he plays in week 1. He's been out there. He's been jogging. He's been playing catch with Daniel Jones. He's still got another 2 weeks to recover from the hamstring. They said it was only going to take him 2 to 3 weeks. It's already been 2 weeks, and he has an extra 2 weeks to recover before we play in the regular season. So I think that he'll play. He might maybe be a little limited athletically, but I don't know. I don't even think so at that point. It's going to be, 5 weeks since he suffered the injury by the time they suit up against the Broncos. So I think he'll be totally fine. They said it was a minor injury anyway. I just think they're being abundantly cautious because they know what they have in Kenny Golladay. They don't need to, do any eye tests on him because they already know he's a bona fide star in this league. So let's just let him rest up, get healthy, and we'll see him in week 1 against the Denver Broncos.
See, I kind of disagree with you on the Kadarius Toney portion of it. I know you said you don't think he'll really make a big impact this year because of how much time he's missed. But I look at a guy like Xavier McKinney as an example of how long it takes for a player to really ramp up. He really came back in the second half of that year, and I think by the end of the season he was looking a lot better. I think it'll probably take Kadarius Toney half the year to get back into the groove. In 3 games, though.
Yes, Xavier McKinney, you know how much I love him. He did have an impact in those final 3 games. That's it. He played 3 games.
I think Toney will have an impact for the second half of the year. Probably the first half they'll be easing him in, but again, it's not like he broke his foot. Like, he's still learning and still on the field. Yeah. He's just not doing 7v7s and 11v11s or 1v1s yet. Like, he had some action before he got COVID. I think the major point that I agree with you on is that live action, those real reps, the timing of it with Daniel Jones and the timing of those jet sweeps across with the offensive line, the blockers, that's what he's missing. That's that real application, the real utilization that he's missing. That's going to take time, but I think they will overwork him in practice when he comes back to make sure that he's ready to go. I think that they'll probably use him in very limited fashion the first 1, 2, 3 weeks of the season. I think he'll probably be back full-time next week after the 3rd preseason game. I doubt he'll play this weekend. But I will say this, with an extra week after the preseason game, or 2 weeks really, if hopefully he's ramped up and he's with the team and practicing like a lot, they can use him in some ways week 1. It'll just have to be a slow ramp up until they feel pretty good about him. But I don't think he's going to be useless the entire season. I really do think he's going to have a good year despite all the shit that's happened.
No, and I never said he would be useless for the year. I never thought that. I'm just saying when we drafted him, first-round pick, first-round wide receiver, you want them ideally to come in and play a starting level of snaps and play really well for the season and have an impact on your offense and really orchestrate certain things within your offense. But right now, if you're talking about him having an impact in the second half of the year, you're talking about your first-round pick being, having no impact for the first 8 weeks of the season. Like, that's a long time for this guy to be missing offensive snaps and missing, being that X factor in the offense that we expected him to be, because we had such a problem last year with catching and making yards after the catch. So we got Kadarius Toney to fix that problem, right? He was the perfect solution because he's the best yards after catch receiver in this draft class. Well, it seems like for the first 8 weeks or so of the season, we're probably still going to have a yards after catch problem, unless Saquon Barkley can alleviate it, which I'm sure he can to some extent. But we really wanted to see Kadarius Toney have a full season under his belt because, if he returns in week 8, he's playing at full speed in week 8, you still have to give him another 4 weeks to get adjusted to playing at full speed and playing a full starting amount of snaps and really allow him to develop. Like, just basically what I'm saying is his development has been stunted to some extent, and he's going to be behind no matter where he picks up. If he picks up in the middle of the season, his impact is obviously diminished from what it would have been if he played the entire season. Of course, duh. But that's just concerning because we were hoping to get a guy that we did get an impact from day one throughout the entire season could really change our offense and the way that it operates. And now it seems like we're going to have to move on without him for a few weeks before we start to ease him into the lineup, and then eventually he'll get to full speed maybe halfway through the year. So the offense can look one way for the first 8 weeks of the season, can look completely different for the second 8 weeks of the season, or 9 weeks of the season now, with Kadarius Toney in there. But because of that, you're going to say, all right, say we drop a few games early on in the year, the first half of the schedule is much easier than the second half of the schedule. So if we drop some games and we say, if we had Kadarius Toney just to, maybe give us that extra push offensively in that one game, but we lost that game, in the long run, you take a look at these things. When players not impacting throughout the entire season, in the long run, it can hurt you, come back to bite you, and it could be the difference between a playoff run and playoff contention. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, I get that. I know, like, any given player missing time can impact wins and losses, right? If Kadarius Toney's not up to speed, if he's not playing and he's not making an impact, maybe that one yards after catch, maybe that one breakaway play that we've seen in Florida, maybe that's the difference between winning and losing. And we've seen that many times in the past, like that one catch that Evan Ingram missed against Philly that would have pretty much made us the playoffs. That's, one play can be the difference between an entire season being successful or a failure. But I will say this. The Giants, luckily, have such a good defense that some of those things will be masked the first couple of weeks. I know the schedule gets tougher as it goes on. But, we just found out today that Teddy Bridgewater will be the starting quarterback for the Denver Broncos in Week 1. What does that mean? It means that the Giants are going to have to be a little bit more careful because he is better at, moving through his progressions. He's a smarter quarterback really than Drew Lock. Doesn't have the arm talent, I would say, that Drew Lock has. But Drew Lock is just so slow with his mental processing and reading the coverages and reading his route concepts that the Giants would have had a field day with him in coverage. They would have disguised things. They would have baited him. He would have been, a swordfish just waiting to get caught. So I think for the most part, Teddy Bridgewater offers a little bit better than Drew Lock, but at the end of the day, he's also not the best quarterback. He's probably hovering around the average range. The Giants can easily take advantage of a quarterback like Teddy. Teddy, would you agree?
Yeah, I think there's a clear difference between the playing style with Teddy Bridgewater and the playing style of Drew Lock. So the criticism with Teddy Bridgewater can be that oftentimes he's too conservative. The criticism with Drew Lock can be oftentimes he's too aggressive, right? So they're on polar opposite ends of the spectrum, but they both, if you take in their good plays and their bad plays, just hover around average to below. You know what I'm saying? I do think that Teddy Bridgewater is the better quarterback, and he is closer to average than Drew Lock is, because when Drew Lock is playing poorly, oh my God, he's the worst quarterback in football. But when he's playing well, he actually looks like a pretty decent player, who can make some of those throws that just you can't cover, right? Some of his throws that he makes where he just guns it down the sideline, cornerbacks or safeties just can't get over there in time, and they can't guard that. And again, one or two of those in a game, if he's playing decently throughout the rest of the game, could finish you. But ultimately, I think when you look at Teddy Bridgewater, this is probably who you would prefer to see for the Giants. I mean, yeah, you know what? Drew Lock is a kind of a turnover machine at times, so yeah, you hope to see him. But for the Giants, easing it into the regular season, you want some good competition, but you don't want it to be killer. Why not just go against the most average quarterback in the NFL in Teddy Bridgewater? You don't have to scheme anything super complex because you know that he is conservative and he's going to go underneath. You can kind of sit back and just play, see ball, get ball. Go tackle, right? Just go make those tackles before they reach the sticks. That's kind of how you can play it. He's also not the best under pressure. He's better than Drew Lock under pressure for sure, but he's not the best under pressure, so you can definitely get some creative blitzes in there. But ultimately, I don't think that you need to worry about being super complex defensively in your schemes and disguising your coverages against either one of these quarterbacks because they're really not that good. They're both just average guys. Teddy Bridgewater definitely reads the field better than Drew Lock, but ultimately, neither one of them are very good quarterbacks. What the Giants really need to focus on is getting their offense into shape to go up against that Denver Broncos defense. Because, man, I'm going to tell you, that Denver Broncos defense is going to be legit this year. Patrick Surtain looks phenomenal through the preseason. Really He's played really well. Von Miller is back. Bradley Chubb is still there. Justin Simmons is still there. I believe Kareem Jackson was brought back.
Fuller.
Ronald Darby is a good player. Yeah, Fuller. Dude, that defense is just loaded. The Giants offense needs to get ready for Week 1. This could be one of those defensive, grudge match games, and that might end up being what it is. Yeah, I think that will be what the game ultimately becomes.
I honestly, I hate to say it, but I think that Daniel Jones is going to have a bad opening game. I think he's going to get really overwhelmed by a really strong secondary.
Now.
No, look, I'm as optimistic as they come. And I think that Daniel Jones is ultimately going to have a good year. But starting off against a defense like that, just like he did against the Pittsburgh Steelers last year, is really, really freaking hard, especially when half of your receivers, your top receivers, are injured or coming back from injuries, and your offensive line is not up to par when it comes to facing off against Von Miller and Bradley Chubb. There's no way you're going to convince me that this offensive line is going to dominate that group. Of course, let the football gods hear me and completely prove me wrong, and let the offensive line crush those guys. Absolutely crush those guys. That's all I want to see, right? But at the end of the day, on paper, they don't match up. Their defense is going to be really good. Our offense is not very good until it's proven otherwise. Our defense is very good. Their offense is not very good. It's going to be a defensive matchup. That's what the matchup says to me. That's what the numbers, that's what the paper says to me. Hopefully, the Giants explode on offense, score 30 points, and we win this game 30-10. And it shows us that, yes, we can beat good teams, and we can beat them nicely, too. We can beat them comfortably, because that's what I really want to see. But Daniel Jones is going to have his work cut out. We're going to see if all that hard work this offseason really paid off. We're going to see if all those drills, all that work behind the scenes of him protecting the football, keeping both hands on the football, his dropbacks, his maneuvering, everything in between, his decision-making, if all those things have really improved. We're going to get a glimpse of it on Sunday against the Patriots, but against Denver, that's going to be a real game plan. They're going to be treating this game upcoming week, as a real game. They're probably going to use last year's playbook, but week 1 come Denver, that's where we're going to see the new playbook. That's where we're going to see the vertical concepts. We're going to see differences in the scheme, more pre-snap motion. Please, Lord, Jason Garrett, please listen to my guy Russ Callaway and Freddie Kitchens, who's been elevated. So they have the personnel to do it. It's just a matter of putting it all together now. It's going to be a vanilla offense, guys. Do not expect to see something extravagant this Sunday. It's going to be vanilla. They're going to be running the football. It's going to be some play action. There's going to be some throws from Daniel Jones, but they're going to try to keep him out of trouble, right? That's the goal. They do not want Daniel Jones to take any hits. They do not want him to be running the football. I guarantee you, Joe Judge is going to have a clear Daniel Jones, you are not running the football. You are standing in the pocket. You're getting rid of the ball quickly. We're using last year's West Coast style playbook, because that's how I think they should approach this.
I'm going to say I think you might be a little wrong there, because I think, when you look at such a difficult defense to face, you're going to have to try to trick them a little bit. So you're going to see a couple plays, I think, where Daniel takes a read option and they're not expecting it, and that's your big spark play that you need in that game.
I'd rather play action go deep.
That's the kind of game that they're going to need a spark for, and I think, play action, go deep. Of course, I want to see that, but that should just be part of their offense generally. It really isn't because of Jason Garrett. But you go watch Los Angeles Chargers, you go watch San Francisco 49ers. They're going to use play action, go deep every damn play, pretty much, or at least twice a drive. But with the Giants, it's just different because of who they have with the offensive coordinator position. But I think the game plan in week 1, and obviously we're looking really far ahead, generally speaking anyway, but I do think the game plan is going to be to run the football quite substantially. I think you're going to see a lot of Devontae Booker in that game, in that game, and you're going to see the Giants just try and run the ball against that defense because the secondary and pass rush is so good.
Do you think running is actually the better move, though?
Yes, I do, because I think that this is a team that if you start throwing the ball too much against them, with Daniel Jones as your quarterback, who's been known to fumble, sometimes have some bad interceptions, this is a team that can force a lot of turnovers in really fast fashion. So you don't want to rack up all those turnovers too quickly in week 1. So you probably want to play this game pretty conservatively with a couple of spark plays, like a read option, like a deep shot. You just want to play a couple, spark plays, but ultimately play a really conservative brand of football.
I agree. I think for week 1, that should be the goal. The goal should be running the football, take a couple of big shots here and there, but you don't want to put your defense. The problem with the offense last year was that we put our defense on the field so much, way too frequently, that they eventually were gassed by the fourth quarter and just couldn't handle it. You know what I mean? They need to be on the field more. So running the football, getting some time off the clock, taking those shot plays when it's on the early downs. I'd rather see them take shots on the early downs. We saw way too many ridiculous attempts last year on third down when it's dude, use the first and second down, use play action on first down, throw the ball on first down, throw the ball on second down, do more interesting things. Way too often I saw either big shots on third down that amounted to nothing or turnovers, or I saw draw plays on third down that we got stopped short of the first down marker. I need to see more shots early on, because you want to take those shots when you have the opportunity. And I just don't think the Giants did a good job of doing that last year. So taking some time off the clock, but also taking your shots early on in drives, will give Daniel Jones a little bit more confidence in making those plays and hopefully catch the defense off guard, because beating a secondary that talented, Justin Simmons at safety, you need to have a really good game plan. You need to be able to get those guys out of position. You need to draw guys away from your receivers. And last year, teams just played cover 1 and cover 0 against us. They just manned up across the board, one safety over top, and they completely shut us down. You can't really do that against Kadarius Toney. I think Sterling Shepard this year in the slot is going to be a menace. You can't really do that with a linebacker on Evan Ingram. You can't guard Saquon Barkley with a linebacker, in my opinion. Kadarius Toney, sure as hell, you can't guard him with a linebacker. You really need a good slot corner, which Denver has. I think they also want to use Patrick Surtain in the slot role as well. So hopefully we'll see this team kind of take a step forward. Hopefully the offense won't be as vanilla. We'll be taking some more shots. The concepts will be a lot more intriguing, a lot more unpredictable. But that's what we're hoping for here. But overall, just to recap everything, Kadarius Toney, he needs to come back ASAP. Kenny Golladay working his way back. Adoree Jackson, injury doesn't seem to be as significant as initially reported. Kyle Rudolph off the PUP list and finally taking snaps with this team and getting himself into the right shape, my friends. But thank you so much for tuning into Fireside Giants as always. Make sure to subscribe below on Apple, Spotify, and YouTube. And we'll chat you guys on the next New York Giants video.